sometimes they can get their shot calling together. Certainly their shot calling in the mid and late game was actually pretty clean once they got gifted a few of those team fights.
And once they got rolling, they were able to run away with it, as you mentioned. Afreeca have had issues in the late game shot calling, so again, weird team to conceptualize, because when they get everything going, and when their cavalry, the likes of Mickey, Lyra, and Sungyun, are on form, this team looks like a middle-of-the-pack or better team.
Well, the Zed and Kog'Maw, the default bans for SK Telecom, Lissandra and Quinn. There's no Fiora ban yet here for Afreeca. Rise yet again, so SKT just sticking to the same 3 bans across all 3 games.
Blue side Rise ban, it is the Fiora as you mentioned, still.
Same bans in every game of this series.
So much power still available, so what has SKT learned? It's not give Lyra the Graves.
I mean, Lyra did pretty well on Nidalee. Remember, he started out 6-1 in the first game of the series that SKT pulled away with, and they might have given up the Alistar Kalista combo here.
Alistar Kalista, Kalista Corki, both of them certainly viable. I think SKT's draft was by far the least of their problems. We praised it heavily in Game 2, but they let the game get away from themselves. Honestly, Corki Kalista is about as much power as you can pack, especially with a champion like Braum available as a backup to the Alistar.
Indeed.
The question is, does Mickey want a red side 5th pick instead of opting for that early Corki? The answer might be yes.
So they are going to early pick the Braum one more time. That will make it more difficult to play the Corki and a multi-AD carry composition. But does hand over the Kalista. Lulu's still available for SKT. They could take Lulu Corki here and try and repeat their composition that won them the game at the start of this series, but no, they take away the Poppy instead.
Gangplank was the lock-in in games 1 and 2. This time moving away from the Gangplank as Duke. It looked great in game 1. Game 2 got away from everyone on SKT, so definitely not a Duke-centric problem, but earlier power spike with the Poppy, and certainly maybe we'll see SKT try to make the aggressive moves earlier and with some more tools, because if you repeat that fight from the previous game in the jungle with a Poppy instead of a Gangplank that needs so much setup time, maybe things go differently. Certainly a good target for the wild growth in the backline is the Poppy.
Definitely. The Nidalee, I think the likely pick here from Lyra. They already have a lot of poke with the Corki, so they will double down on that, and Lyra trying to finish off this night. He's been playing well pretty much all evening so far.
I'm so intrigued to see what Afreeca's last pick is, because it's going to be for top. It's going to be for Ixu, who has looked most impressive on the Poppy. It's taken away from him now. Does he just go Duke School of Thought and pick up a Gangplank, or do we see something different? Because this is a scenario where a lot of interesting champions are viable. If they do go through with some of these picks, maybe it's Rammus time for Ixu.
Alistar and Ezreal. I'm a bit surprised they didn't go for the Lucian instead. Wanting to scale into that late game, and the Braum will be pretty effective against the Graves and Ezreal combination. Early pick justifying itself this time for the Afreeca Freecs.
So you're Ixu, drafting for top, you're largely a tank player. What are you thinking in this scenario? Because you're against a Poppy, so you actually have pretty wide range of champions that are viable in this case, both carry and tank.
Go for the Rammus.
The Rammus is what I thought. That's certainly where Someday would go. Nara is a champion he plays, but so risky to go for. The Trundle's one we didn't mention, but certainly fits the wheelhouse and can be a split-pushing terror against the Poppy.
Also just more fantastic disengage for their Kalista, Corki, and Nidalee composition. So it will be the Trundle. We see him very rarely in the top lane here in Korea, but we're going to see him tonight from Afreeca, and Ixu has a chance to make his mark on this series and really go the distance here. If Afreeca could engineer this upset, it is going to be huge for them, and SK Telecom will continue to tumble down the rankings.
Afreeca definitely have a team comp that has a clear point of power. The mid-game siege with all the disengage from Braum and Trundle is ridiculous, but execution-heavy comps piloted by teams in the bottom 4 or 5 slots They usually go really great or really bad.
That's very true. But at least Afreeca, they have options in the late game. The split pushing Trundle is going to be more and more relevant as time goes on. So even if they can't group up as 5 and play that poke game anymore, they at least have the wave clear to play around a Trundle in the split pushing position.
Siege, split push, if they can pick some dragons as well, maybe that's enough in conditions that the pure Siege doesn't work. They've got something else to go back to.
I really like this draft much better from Afreeca this game. Bang is going to have his work cut out for him. Likely going to be a lane swap situation if SK Telecom has their druthers. Wanting to hide Bang as long as possible, get him started off with that tier and scaling into that very scary late game. We're going to go to game 3 right now. SKT versus the Freecs.
Mother Nature, everybody wants to rule.
Game 3. I didn't think we'd make it here, Papa Smithy, after that start to game 2, but Afreeca bounce back, force the deciding match, and they have a shot here at a major upset versus SK Telecom T1. And SKT coming off that painful loss to Longzhu Gaming. That would add insult to injury to go down here to the Freecs, but the Freecs trying to climb their way out of the bottom, and here and there, just like last year, we talked about this when they were Rebels Anarchy, they could steal single games away from top teams that were always a threat, because individually these guys are quite talented. It's just been putting together their macro game as a unit that has eluded them thus far.
And that's why we were so optimistic to see Afreeca take the next step, to start assaulting those playoff spots. 5th seemed very likely or possible for Afreeca if they took that next step. They looked like they were doing it at Casper Cup, but since then, it's been largely a start to the split that they'd like to forget. But as you said, in isolated games, against the Rocks Tigers, now against SKT, they've picked up wins. If they were to win this series, just to let the fans know that because this is the last match both these teams will play before the break, there will be a full team interview, as OGN loves to do. Imagine a scenario where in their last series before IEM, there's a full team interview with Afreeca and not SK Telecom. It's crazy to think, but certainly possible.
Well, it's going to be the aim of Afreeca here. SK Telecom still showing that they have some work to do. Man, after KT, they looked so good.
I know.
It's just a moment, a glimmer of perhaps what we could see from SKT later this year, but they just haven't been able to hit that peak consistency level. Perhaps overperforming against KT, and honestly, KT also struggling as of late, so this may be 2 factors right here coming into convergence.
Just weird to use terms like of late when usually it's a patch change, right? Usually it's Cinderhulk shows up or something really is rejigged in the meta, but nothing's changed at all in terms of patches in 3 weeks, so surprising to see. It feels like teams are starting to understand patches, teams are starting to move forward. One thing we didn't notice actually is that standard lanes are actually observed in this game.
Bit of a surprise, and you can see the effect. Songyun already jumping out to a slight CS lead. Now SKT, they go back to the Lulu and the double teleport that we saw them play in the first game, and that's really what sealed them their victory, was their much better map play compared to Afreeca, and now Afreeca don't even have a Twisted Fate to counter it. So I think it's smart of SKT to go back to the drawing board, say, hey, how did we win this first game of the series? We did it with better TP play and better pressure play on the map, and that's where they're going to return. And Afreeca this game have even fewer tools to deal with that, even though they have the Trundle for the very strong split push.
I think it's surprising, though, that we see SKT not look for a lane swap. This is definitely, when you have Alistair Ezreal, a lane that's got a bit of scattered identity. Bang's going to itemize into tier and want a free lane where possible, and you're against Kalista Braum, who have a lot of kill pressure if the concussive blows start stacking. It's a bit of a surprise to me to see them go for the standard lanes when it feels like they were heavily incentivized to go for a lane swap, but that's what we get this game.
That is what we are going to end up with. And there's always that possibility that it was kind of a double bluff here, SK Telecom thinking that Afreeca would go to the top side again, based on the warding right now and the way that teams know how to play around deep wards at level 1, it's really quite difficult to get what you want, and it does end up a lot of the time being a bit of a coin flip.
Getting a deep ward level 1 just doesn't give you what it once did. Used to be almost certainty of getting a certain lane assignment even if the enemy knew where you were putting your wards, but now it's certainly not there, so lane swaps can be a bit erratic, whether they come off or not.
Bang fighting back, he's doing just fine, but this isn't really where things start going bad for Ezreal. It's after that first shot, and Ezreal has no combat stats at a tier that the real trades can start to come in.
And one person buys mana, the other one buys, in this the Kalista, either attack speed or AD, both of which suit the trading matchup. Of course, Ezreal's safe enough that he can sit back. Maybe they won't have a lot of lane pressure, but if he can sit back and Wolf can roam, maybe they can make the Alistar plays happen. But Wolf's certainly not Gorilla when it comes to the Alistar roams, so maybe just going to see an extended laning phase. And if Ezreal gets away with 5, 10 CS disadvantage while he stacks up the tier, not going to complain too much.
Certainly be happy with that. And they have some amount of pressure in the other lanes, but Trundle getting rolling early on will be moving into a phage here pretty quickly, and Duke just trying to farm pretty deep next to his own turret, but that's going to mean Ixu doesn't have to burn his TP to get back into this lane.
Not sure, but phage doesn't really sound like a Trundle item. Titanic Hydra maybe is going to be that. I mean, you could build a phage, right?
You're right?
It always feels good, but we have seen mostly Ravenous Hydra, then health items, and a quick switch to Titanic Hydra, but Titanic Hydra does have good pushing options, so maybe just going to go for that. But again, it could be a phage, it's just, it feels like you get one of those Tiamat items as fast as possible.
Yeah,
if you're
definitely.
Trundle.
No, totally agree with you. And that's the curious thing about Trundle, too, is just one attack damage item often the only thing he really needs.
Yes, his sustain is just outrageous. You get a Spirit Visage at some point, even if you don't have a lifesteal. Getting so much sustain as Sangyuna. Krug resets.
Invade here, courtesy of Wolf and Bengi, and that'll trigger Lyra to do the same thing on the opposite side of the map. Deep wards in for both teams on opposite side of the map.
Trundle strikes me as a very Monte Cristo champion, because while you do build 180 item, from there you do damage, but it's against structures, it's against minions. You disregard the enemy champion trying to kill you and kill those turrets.
Well, you still kill everybody in the late game. That's the scary part.
Do you kill them though? Oh, teleport.
TP really hurt. Whoa, big dive, flash, and there's the knockback. Snowflower going to jump forward to the minion wave. Faker trying to slow down Songyun, but they will just end up with a collapse, and the first blood will end up in Bengi's hands, and the True Shot Barrage flies on past Songyun. Ixu not answering the double TP. SKT doing a good job of setting that up. They get one kill in the bottom side, and they're going to take the Dragon too.
We mentioned potentially Afreeca picking up some Dragon stacks to give them a backup win condition, but if SKT want the first Dragon, they're going to get it. Because of the buffs that were started, Nidalee's able to steal away blue, and as of yet, there's no blue buff for SKT to steal away on Afreeca's side.
Casual first Dragon right here. And Faker will return to lane with not too much damage dealt to his turret, but great opportunity that SKT found to turn around that lane and start snowballing. I mean, look at Bang right there, actually starting to get a pretty impressive CS advantage on what will be a blue build Ezreal, but there's that first buy, and it'll be a Cutlass versus the tier and the pickaxe.
I think it was just good knowledge from SKT. They had Poppy push up and top. That's something unique that Poppy can do against Trundle, is that Trundle, before Tiamat, has no wave control, so pushed up. There was never going to be a punishment onto the turret of Duke in the top lane. Lulu at that point had pushed up as well. They could invest everything, and Afreeca, the most they could hope to do is get a little bit of chip damage on mid, or just maybe steal away a blue buff. The opportunity cost of putting in those two turrets was super low, whereas when Titanic Hydra is finished, you can't make those sort of plays in top.
No, the pressure will always be there. Wolf actually only level 5 right now. He blew his flash earlier, and he's going to get a chain knockup. Bengi shows up, but he shows up late, and that's going to be Bang flashing out, and exhaust goes down, but Bang has the arcane shift to escape, and they just can't fight against that Cutlass. So caught out in the Tri-Brush trying to get a ward, and so SKT Gets their kill lead evened out right here, and thanks to that double TP, sure they got an edge for the Ezreal in the bottom lane, but they sacrificed CS in top and mid. So gold lead to the Freecs.
And let's clarify, that edge was some CS, but again, the gold's been further spent on mana. Just a Sapphire Crystal is the purchase re-entering lane, whereas attack speed's going to give Sangyun even more trading options in the bottom lane. So the edge was really just trying to build this 2v2 into some sort of equity, and it's only going to be blown out with those kills going over.
Wow, that Sapphire Crystal, so just attempted the Iceborne Gauntlet, a hodgepodge of items at the moment for Bang.
What's 1,000+ gold spent on something that doesn't help him in lane?
Nope. Helps him slowly poke his opponent down, but with the lifesteal.
I mean, let's be real, it helps him slowly push the minion wave back.
Yeah.
He's not going to poke anybody, he's going to just try and deal with the creeps that are pushed up to his turret, so sad times for the bot lane, but expected. And it's one of those things where when you have Alistar Ezreal, either the Ezreal is sniping minions, getting denied under the turret, and the Alistar's roaming, or Alistar's going to spend all his time in bot. It seems like SKT are going to go with the latter. In a lane swap situation, we've seen a lot of teams. Rox Tiger's probably the best at this. How often do we see Prey on blue Ezreal 1v1ing the enemy top laner who's been denied in a lane swap? When you're dealing with an enemy laner with not a lot of gold, when you're against an enemy laner with plenty of gold like Sangyun, really amplifies the disadvantage of tier stacking Ezreal.
Faker and Bengi now on Sentinel clearing duty. Thought they may be able to find some sort of angle right there, but doesn't end up getting too much in the end. Just trying to make sure they don't have too many of those Callista movable wards running around the bottom side of the map.
Getting dangerously close to Officer Trundle dictating this lane.
Yeah, that's starting to fall away here. Just a hair for SKT. Gold lead continues to increase just a little bit over time for the Freecs, and Duke is struggling now, going for the Glacial Shroud after the Bombi Cinder.
See if he changes his purchase route. We do see some players against Trundle going for health over other stats, maybe going for the Sunfire Cape over the Iceborne Gauntlet Rush. Wait and see.
Fight over the Scuttle Crab. Crab Wars
Crab Wars
will be won by Bengi. It only seems appropriate that Bengi would win the creep/vision battle all at the same time with one fell stroke.
The most bloodthirsty graves alive. Wait, no. Likes killing creeps.
Loves killing creeps. Creeps are his favorite. Duke wants to punish Lyra, but Lyra just too quick with the pouncing and the runic echoes. Easily able to evade and actually pick up a pink ward too, so denying some vision all in the same stroke.
They were doing his best Peanut impression.
Threatening to dive, but Duke will not be fooled by that, backing off and finishing out his farm, as there's not enough minions to justify any kind of under-turret aggression. Faker now whimsies himself and dodges to the side, but Mickey has been taking over this lane and mercilessly chipping the tower.
Oh. But Lyra, that's still a success. They weren't able to pass the blue buff over to Lulu. One thing I was going to mention as we saw that tussle in mid was translating the pressure they've created into denying resources from SKT. And while Bengi picking up the blue buff doesn't sound like a denial, it certainly was one effectively in that situation. So Lulu will have less lane control.
Trying to harass as best as he can. Actually does a nice job with the Thunderlord's proc. And the help picks.
Draws out the heal.
Got the heal out. Faker now is pushing this up, making sure that he buys a couple more minutes with that mid lane turret. Sangyun back in his own jungle right now. Bang's still doing okay, and we know how Bang can take over games on this blue build. Ezreal has been one of SK Telecom's primary forms of winning games so far this season. Has been waiting for Bang to get absolutely huge on blue Ezreal and then just manhandle team fights.
I think Bang and Kramer share strategies on blue Ezreal. They've certainly been the noted blue Ezreal players this season, as Prey has pivoted to some other 80 carries.
Ashe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, they're sitting over there playing blue Ezreal, and Prey is a big fan of the Hurricane Ash.
Hurricane Essence Reaver Ash.
Whatever works, man.
Afreeca gets their first dragon of the game. No one on SK Telecom really has an opportunity to go for that. Faker TP down, and also not even in that lane. Mickey, see if you can translate this into one more objective. That mid turret for SKT just so low right now, but with Faker's wave clear, he'll be keeping it alive a little bit longer. Blue buff goes over to Mickey.
He was already getting chip damage in without blue buff in the equation. Faker, of course, we noted, had his blue buff taken away, so maybe that'll mean the turret mid.
Very well could, especially now that he's zoned all the way out, but still no minions to make this turret kill a reality. And otherwise, it's a lot of trading with spears in the bottom side.
Just look at the lane pressure that's happened this game. Afreeca have been under SKT turret in bot, in mid. We've seen it in top as well. This is definitely free reign for Lyra to do his best Peanut impression and just be all over the enemy jungle, because vision of these laners who can't react quickly because of the lane pressure of the creeps has been immense from Afreeca.
Right.
Uh-oh.
And Lyra now forced to flash.
Good flash from Lyra.
So just go ahead and preempt that one. Don't get caught by a chain of CC here from the Lulu and lose your life instead.
I mean, the moment you kite into a brush next to a wall with Graves in the story, it can go very poorly, so smart to preempt the flash.
Bengi and Wolf taking a beating, and here's the package actually. Corky gonna Valk forward, Bang gonna try and true shot barrage, but Mickey is all over him, and there's the flash. Faker getting the wild growth down. They're gonna kill Wolf. Exhaust now onto Mickey, but SKT just has to run right now. Lots of summoners used on the SK Telecom side. They had to use 5. As a matter of fact, all 3 flashes, a heal, and an exhaust. So Afreeca continuing to do work.
Duke, of course, couldn't teleport over. You definitely give Poppy the advantage in that teleport war compared to Trundle in terms of impact, but of course, the traffic cone does interrupt the channel of the teleport, so wasn't able to make it down. The result, more pressure, more advantages for Afreeca.
Playing out this early game really nicely. Not like that first game where Afreeca had some hiccups after their initial success and then ended up giving away the game. This time around, they can take that mid turret first, they can take that nice gold lead, and then perhaps transition it into some more turrets like we saw them do quite well in the macro game in game number 2.
Worrying times for SKT. Feels like at this point they're going to keep putting eggs in the late game bang basket. That sometimes works, but doesn't always. So it's risky for them to bet everything on the blue Ezreal. CJ Entus do it more often than not. Certainly don't get much above a 500% win rate with that. Sorry, 50% win rate with that.
Wow, that's,
I know if they got a 500% win rate, they're just winning other games as they play one. That'd be nice.
Just got the Hearthstone client open in the background playing the
I'm legend in every game, Monty.
Challenger Legend. Let's go.
You know all about that.
Challenger Legend? No, I don't think I do. I've never been Challenger nor Legend.
Really?
As a matter of fact.
Why do I listen to you then, Monty? What do you know about video games?
Clearly not a whole lot.
Bang's completely zoned in bottom without even extra pressure coming. That's with Graves to relieve pressure. SKT just don't have the vision in the bot side of the map, so mid turret falls. Top turret's still healthy, but bot turret falls as well.
They're trying to disengage with the spooky ghost, just out of range of that rocket. Bengi now makes his way up into the mid lane, afraid that Corky may think about a dive right here, and he will discourage him from doing that by pushing him back away from the turret. Another blue buff though, Lyra. They're just having a great day.
I mean, Afreeca's pressure game has been perfect. They had the advantage in all the lanes. We pointed it out. Some teams will be too shy on the trigger to actually push for advantages, but buffs have been contested. Faker, I don't believe, has picked up a single blue buff this game.
He's been really struggling. That is true. Faker once again going for that Lich Bane first, and with double TP, SK Telecom, even though they may lose the TP wars against this Trundle, at least they can 1-3-1 split push, which isn't something that Afreeca can necessarily do. So It's all about playing around these minion waves right now and seeing who can get the more effective split push, whether it's a 4-1 from Afreeca or whether it's a possible 1-3-1 from SK Telecom.
4-1 is so heavily incentivized from Afreeca because SKT just want to give free time to Ezreal in an off lane. Ezreal has been forced to leave this bottom lane. No teleport, obviously, whereas Trundle, of course, can walk over to bottom and pick up minions. And now Bang and Faker are contesting CS in the mid, which really starts to put SKT behind and just getting resources on the right people.
Wolf on his own little solo warding mission. Gets one over by the Raptor pit, but can't get much else down before he has to get on the run.
So who are we pointing our fingers at for SKT? I think it was easy to point the finger at Bengi in that series against Longzhu. What do you take away from today in terms of more of the micro play rather than some of the macro strategy questions?
Oh, I don't know about that. Bengi hasn't really shown up on any of these junglers yet. He hasn't been dealing overwhelming amounts of damage or contributing a lot in the last couple of games. Did get the first blood this time, but it was a coordinated double TP dive. So he kind of got lucky that he managed to polish off Snowflower.
Some of my big question marks around, honestly, the duo you see on the minimap here, Wolf and Bengi, both solo and together. They've been a fearsome duo on many occasions, but both of them, I think, going a bit MIA in this series.
Yeah, a lot of Duke's old teleports have kind of hurt rather than helped.
Well, Ixu's all alone, but SKT really are not confident to take this turret.
No, and they should not be. There are a lot of people here to try and help out, with 4 of them coming up to give that little bit of assistance. And Faker has just been sent down into the bottom lane, as has Mickey. And there's the package coming in. He's going to go in. Nice knock up right there. TP's coming in from both top laners. Mickey doing some work right here. And there is Duke with the heroic charge. Gets the knock up onto him, and Mickey is dead. Meanwhile, Ixu will clean up Faker, and this is where the Trundle starts to get very scary.
Slower on the teleport, but they realized they would get this turret in top anyway, so it's a good trade from a Afreeca's perspective, unless SKT can power down this mid lane turret.
Yeah, they have the Ezreal and the Graves here. Meanwhile, they're going to try and punt Italy back out. There's the Iceborne Gauntlet proc, but not going to be enough. Snowflower now on the pursuit. Ixu coming in from the flank, getting some damage down to the Wolf. Wolf does use his ultimate. They've got a long way to run, though. Nice Glacial Fissure is going to knock up Wolf just a little bit longer. They're trying to buy time. Duke will arrive a little bit late, but still has an opportunity to save the rest of his team and convince the Afreeca Freecs they don't want to go further. But Afreeca, they make the trade for the kill there, but they get the turret, and this is a very early Baron.
SKT have no idea. They're checking it now. They're going to be surprised to see a Baron at 5,000 health. Poppy can't get there quick enough. Ezreal neither. There's 2 pinks in the river. This should be an easy Baron for Afreeca.
Yep, especially with that Rend, and that's the pickup from Lyra. He will execute it, and at 23 minutes they get a Baron. Ixu just having a giggle on your screen right there. He should be quite happy because they have put themselves in an excellent position to win this game.
It was so smart. We're going to go back to this kill, though, on bottom. The first teleport is channeled by SKT. They make the clearest call. That means only at best going to be a 1-for-1, but I really underrate the damage from this. Not the Ravenous Hydra, but the Titanic Hydra Trundle. When you get that auto attack reset with the AoE, he just exploded the last 600 HP of the Lulu.
Yeah, also just that little bit of extra time Mickey bought with his Summoner heal put down the necessary damage onto Faker too, so can't discount that either.
I mean, Afreeca just so smart and decisive around the Baron. I noted on the map they had 2 pink wards in the pathway for SKT towards Baron. They stopped to clear them. They were dissuaded. Of course, they didn't have any vision in the area. Making decisive, vision-based Baron plays. I can count on one hand how many teams have been doing that. Honestly, on one finger. It's only really been the Rocks Tigers who have impressed me, but in this series at least, Afreeca's in the same wheelhouse.
Except for that game 1, that was a little bit risky. Well, they decided
that was bad.
That was bad, but ever since then they've been much more on point, learning quickly from that mistake and not extending it into their games. Duke trying to punish Ixu, but it's just so slow going. Afreeca, in the meantime, is making plays everywhere on this map. It really doesn't matter if Ixu dies because they're going to lose 2 tier 2s for it. His distraction was very good, and Lyra still getting damage down onto the mid inhibitor. How far are they going to push this? Not far enough. Even with that Baron buff, SK Telecom gets a kill, and the base has not been cracked.
But who is making the call for the 4 members to keep investing onto Ixu is my question, because they were only ever going to lose the turret trade, but to lose it in such a strong fashion, it's not the SKT I know.
No, poor call. 2 tier 2 turrets in exchange for that, and they don't have a whole lot to show besides a dead troll, which will be a great trade. With the dust settles. Lyra caught out just a little bit right here. Snowflower is back up. Nice block. The Unbreakable onto Bengi's ultimate.
It's a good Zonya as well, so Lyra actually Zonya's the collateral damage, but in the end wasn't going to be a big factor. We're not sure on the Dragon timer, but...
By the way, Rod of Asia Zonya is already for Lyra. 162 CS at 25 minutes. Pretty good for a jungler.
I think Lyra's just been cranking the solo queue as far as I can see. This is not the same Lyra that we saw in the past weeks of the season.
He's 2 levels up onto Bengi, so the efficiency of that Nidalee farming, we've seen it from a lot of our Nidalee junglers. Easy to get an advantage when you're as quick through the jungle as Nidalee can be.
I don't think you can talk about the matchup. It's not like Graves has any struggles whatsoever at clearing the jungle, so... This is more about Lyra versus Bengi. Lyra's looking a class above. Again, it's only a small snapshot. Maybe order will return itself when some of those champions are available for Bengi in the next patch, but today at least, Lyra's looked a step above Bengi.
SKT really on the rocks now. I don't mean the Tigers, I mean they are very far behind in this game and probably going to lose, Papa Smithy.
And they're nowhere near the Rocks Tigers, Monte Cristo, let's be clear.
No, they are not. Truly struggling in this new 2016 year after their World Championship victory. Afreeca, they've taken the wins. They've taken the wins against the good team, but they have yet to close out a best of 3, and this is a huge opportunity for them.
I mean, they're a serial offender in being able to struggling to close out games in general. They look good doing in game 2. No guarantee they won't make some poor plays around objectives this game, despite their impressive start.
That start at the Baron was pretty darn good. Dragon number 3 scooped up for the Afreeca Freecs. A 9,000 gold lead. There are 3 dragons here at 27 minutes, and it's their game to lose. They can still get a pre-40 minute 5th dragon if they can keep this rolling, and Baron will be up by about 30 here.
Let's come back to pick and ban. We liked what Afreeca did this game 3, although we didn't like their game 2 and they managed to win that one. But just talking a bit about SKT, the big puzzler to us was Blue Ezreal over Lucian. Lucian seemed like the most obvious choice. Lucian Lulu, for what, 6, 8, 10 months now, has been a staple of SKT team comps. You look at this comp and honestly, is it just Poppy focus? Is Poppy the person who's getting whimsied? Is Poppy the person who's getting wild growth? Because it doesn't feel like Ezreal really demands that. He already has so much mobility in his kit.
Yeah, we don't usually see the protect the Ezreal compositions. But that said, SKT has run them this season. They have run like 4 tanks with Tom Ketch and a Blue Ezreal. That is how they took a game off the Rocks Tigers.
Not quite 4 tanks, but certainly a similar lineup that we're seeing here. Afreeca haven't broken the base yet, and that's maybe the one thing that SKT can talk about. They have both their teleports up as well, so very difficult for them to be out-rotated. They just still need to take the next step.
I just don't think they're going to be able to get anywhere close to this next Baron when it spawns.
That's damage.
Yeah, the Lyra is starting to go pretty crazy here with more and more AP stacking from him.
And confidence also. He's going in for auto attacks on Nidalee on turrets, which show his confidence. He flashed over a wall to kill Faker that really sealed the deal for Afreeca in game 2. Lyra always did strike me as a bit of a confidence player. At the start of the season, you know, just after Mickey had wowed us with his Zed against Najin in game 1 of Summer, Lyra was also, you know, a very big duo act with Mickey, and honestly, the series has been very little about Mickey and mostly about the supporting cast, the likes of Sungyun and Lyra.
Lyra really has turned it on tonight. He has had massive kill scores in all 3 games so far. I mean, there are only 3 here, so picking up one of them. But in games 1 and 2, Lyra was very powerful early, starting out 6-1 on Nidalee, getting the MVP and not even dying on Graves in the last game. A half dozen kills to his name too, and this has been a great night to be Lyra.
Can't disagree one bit. If I was making a Rising Stars team comp, okay, Lyra's been around the scene a while, but he certainly is an argument based on today's performance, if he can keep it up. Again, he was actually very good on Graves earlier this week, but that was against much lower opposition than EM Fire. But the likes of Lyra, the likes of Cuvée, these players that are taking the next step are always fun to track after we saw the rapid development of Smeb in particular in 2015. And it's going to be about keeping this level of performance after the break. Remember, this is Lyra's last game in the first round robin.
Lyra's a player who's been around for a long time, actually, and starting off most notably on Frost, actually, CJ Frost, after Cloud Templar's departure, and that was a big moment for him. And I remember talking to him after he was cut from Frost, and Frost picked up Swift instead, and he was really worried. He expressed worry to me that he was never going to be able to really play on a Korean team again. He ended up going to China and playing on OMG's reserve team for a while, and then came back to Korea and started off once again on Rebels Anarchy once Mickey returned from China too. And this is a guy who, he was given so much at the very start of his career, that shot on a very strong CJ Frost team, and he just couldn't cut it. So he's been looking for the spotlight and that recognition ever since that moment.
And hasn't it been a season for players like that? Let's think of another one. Wraith, of course, on Samsung, having that big resurgence. He, of course, had his chance as Casper on this SK Telecom T1 lineup. Of course, the most dominant of all back in 2013. It's only now that he's really starting to once again be putting things together on one of his new teams. So honestly, it's nice to see players like that who we counted out. Again, Smeb was an incredible miracle who was in the same situation. Afreeca, they started up the Baron, and SKT, so far not interested.
Yep, just gonna TP in. Very quick take right there. SKT, no chance to respond. And Ixu is here.
Here we go.
Oh boy, there's the team fight starting up. Faker just gonna ult himself immediately and get out Benki low. Taken out by Mickey on the flank. Mickey still coming through, and Faker is going to end up dying here. Lyra on the pursuit. Whimsy trying to get Faker away. Can he get it? No, the spear, the triple though for Mickey. Faker still on the run, but all Lyra has to do is buy time right now. It's after 30 minutes, and they're just gonna push for the win. The Afreeca Freecs coming through in game 2 and 3, the big comeback in game 2 and a dominant game 3, and they are going to take a best of 3 win here over SK Telecom T1.
No other way to say it. What an insanely poor week from SK Telecom T1. Their last 2 matches before IEM, after so much confidence building in the win in the Telecom Wars 1 week ago. These guys are ecstatic in the booth, and SKT are 0-4 on the week.
Yeah, well, they're 1-4, but there you go. It's just a hard week. I mean, Longzhu really looked good against them, but this should have been a 2-0 win for SKT. There's no other way to say it. That game 2 was a real mistake, and the Afreeca Freecs, they take it though, they take that mistake, and in game 3 they play very well.
And how much does it mean to these guys who were just courting sponsors for the whole of the offseason? It wasn't even clear if they'd be able to field a roster in the 2016 champion season. Afreeca, the organization, the streaming platform, rescues them, and after a hard start to the season, what an amazing week 6 for them.
SKT will end the first round robin at 5-4, just a little bit above 50%. Afreeca Freecs at 4-5, jumping up the rankings, and that means SKT has a lot of work to do in the second round robin if they even want to have a shot at a playoff seed. 4 match losses this split. They only lost 1 the entirety of summer. Yeah, rough start for SKT. You see the look on Bengi's face right there. Tough time for him, just pretty much entirely outclassed by Lyra in all 3 of these games.
Gonna have to convince their players, their fans at IEM with no momentum on a new patch, because 6.2, bit of a struggle for SKT.
Well, they've got a lot to work on, but they have some time to do it. A couple weeks before they play again in Poland, and we'll be back with our second best of 3 in a few minutes.